Welcome, everyone, to the first episode of the Spidey Swing-Bys podcast. This is hosted on the Systematic Geekology YouTube page. This will be part of the Amazon Ministries Podcasting Network. If you have been involved with us for some time, you know, hey, didn't you do this already, Christian? Well, yes, but not in podcast form. It was just something for YouTube. I'm changing things up. I want to restart from the very beginning, go from Amazing Fantasy 15, and then go through every single Spider-Man comic ever released, every time he's ever appeared, and we're just going to see how that goes. I'm hoping for this to be a weekly series, and you may notice, for those of you who've been here, there are no images being used this time around. That kind of frees me up a bit. It's a lot of extra work to do to get the exact comic panel the right way that I want it, and you know what? It's not worth it. Would it look better? Probably, but you know what? I've just gotten to the point where I don't care. I'll be perfectly honest with you, and that's something else I need to bring up too. I'm not a professional editor, so what gets released here on YouTube is what comes out on the podcast. There's no editing done there. We don't have time for anyone to do it. I don't know how to do it again. So you know what? If that's something that you're not for, go out in peace. And everyone else who wants to stay can stay. You won't hurt my feelings one way or the other. So, with all that in mind, we're going to be getting into Amazing Fantasy 15 today. And man, Spider-Man is my favorite character of all time. I'm so happy to be going through these comics. Hopefully, I'm not going to be the only one doing all these. It didn't work out this week for other people. Several of my hosts from Systematic Geekology have expressed interest in joining me every now and then for some of these. So, we'll see what happens there. But for right now, it's just me. So let's get into this Amazing Fantasy 15. This was released in June 5th, 1962. The writers are Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, penciled by Steve Ditko, inked by Steve Ditko, colored by Stan Goldberg, lettered by Artie Simek, edited by Stan Lee. And one thing I do like to do, and I'm going to keep from the last time, minus the images, is, ask what else was going on in Marvel this month. And when we get to, when there are more Spider-Man comics released, well, this week or half month or whatever, we'll get there when we get there. But for right now, we're just going to stick to month. Also appearing for the first time this month in Journey into Mystery 83, Donald Blake becomes the Mighty Thor for the first time by fighting the Cronin invaders. Eventually, that's where we'll get, Korg from. If you're very into the Guardians and Thor and the MCU films, that's where he originates from here. There's some retconning done in that thing. So solid enough. I'm also reading these as well, so that I can, refresh my memory of what happened during the Marvel ages around this time. Then we move on to Tales to Astonish 35. That's where we get Hank Pym suiting up for the first time as Ant-Man. He had appeared 8 issues earlier. We're having an adventure there, and what they would always do back in the day, for those not initiated, is they'd have these different comics to be like a sci-fi kind of thing, maybe a fantasy little thing, maybe a horror one. And Hank Pym was one of the people that were generally what would be the scientist of the month, as it were. And they'd be discovering something, and people really responded well to him. So they brought him back again. Now we have the first appearance of Ant-Man. And what does he do? The first time, well, he fights some dirty commies, which, as we go through the rest of the time in his 60s, is going to be a recurring theme. What I'm not opposed to. But you know what? Yeah, the story well does run dry after a while. But we'll get there when we get there. Also this month, we had Fantastic Four number 6, where Namor the Submariner and Doctor Doom team up, the first villain team-ups in Marvel Comics history. As they go to crush the Fantastic Four, we get the intrigue and the, triangular romance-ish between, love triangle, that's the word I'm looking for, between Sue, Reed, and Namor. And only at the end to find out that Doom had sabotaged Namor and double-crossed him to get rid of him as a potential threat, but also the Fantastic Four, and send his enemies in the Baxter building into space. So they have to work together to figure out how to do there. Great stories. Early Marvel is really fun. There's some janky stuff of the time, of course, but there's also an honesty and earnestness to it, especially we're going to see in Amazing Fantasy 15. So I don't want to focus solely on Spider-Man because he lives in a lived-in universe. And he's going to be crossing over, next episode alone, he's going to be crossing over with the Fantastic Four. In the second time that's happening, that then Marvel, modern Marvel history, obviously in the 40s, they had done with the Human Torch and Namor, and then eventually some of the others will cross over there too. But this is, at the time, unprecedented for it to happen. It's been for Marvel. it's been 20 some years. So I'm looking forward to that. So with that out of the way, before we actually get into Amazing Fantasy 15, I do want to, respond to some questions people may have. Like your first time you've ever heard my voice, welcome. Hope I don't grate you too much with it. So you may be asking, who am I? Well, I'm Christian Ashley. I'm one of the co-hosts of Systematic Geekology. This is where we talk about, the blending of our faith and the fandoms that we live in without trying to force Jesus into everything there as well. I'm also on a show called Why I Don't Like. That's a show where I go through different series that don't really pique my interest too much, and there's something about them that I'm not quite fond of, and I'll go into why and like why I try not to hate things, but if something it really grates me, really grinds my gears, I'm going to explain why I think that way, why I think someone else would like it, even though I don't like it. And there, as well, I'm on Friday Night Frights. It's with Joe Day. We discuss different cryptozoological, paranormal, ufological, and the like topic every month. That's been a lot of fun. We just had a recent episode on the nameless thing of 50 Berkeley Square. Had a great time doing that one together. That'll be in podcast form the week after this releases. So that'll be nice. So me as well. I just graduated from seminary. I'm in the middle of the job hunt, trying to find a pastoral position somewhere. I'm let's see, how old am I now? 35. I'm old. Put it that way. Balding. That's always fun too. I went to UNC Wilmington for my undergrad, creative writing, English major. So you got my MDiv at Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, and I'm volunteering at my church in the youth ministry at times. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Now, how did I get into Spider-Man? Fairly early on. Like I said earlier, Spider-Man is my guy. I love his character so much. He's always been a source of inspiration to me, someone I can look up to and say, I want to be a little more like him. And yet he has his negative aspects too, which a good character should. And I'm not too big on those, but the ones that ultimately win me out are his inability to just stay down, always fighting against people who are stronger than him, wisecracking to not let get under his enemy's skins and not let them know how afraid he is. Also, as well, like how good of a friend he can be when written well, and plenty of other things. And obviously, the whole responsibility thing, we'll get into that because it starts off in this very issue in Amazing Fantasy 15. So I got into Spider-Man when in the early 90s when the animated series came out. And my dad and we'd already watched like X-Men and Batman. So we added Spider-Man to the mix, and we get into the, Superman. See what else came out. The Silver Surfer, Iron Man, Fantastic Four, all those different hero series that were coming out from Marvel and DC in the 90s. And that's what made me a lifelong comics fan, to the point where I would start reading the comics. And my dad has been a huge comics collector for a very long time. He doesn't have everything, working on a high school teacher salary. He can only afford so much. And then you put that on with having 4 kids and a wife. Doesn't always leave room for comics and fun. But what he does have, I've read pretty much almost everything that he does have. And the Spider-Man stories are some of my favorite series of all time is Marvel Team Up, not because of its quality, but because it shows my favorite superhero ever, Spider-Man, teaming up with other Marvel heroes. And I'm a team up guy. I love it when it happens. It's just so much fun. So that's it for that part. Let's actually get into Amazing Fantasy 15. We start off with one of, if not the most iconic covers of all time. Yeah, Amazing Fantasy 15, introducing Spider-Man. Though the world may mock Peter Parker, the timid teenager, we'll get in that in a bit, it will soon marvel at the awesome might of Spider-Man. It shows him holding, looks like some kind of crook, people watching him from the rooftop, swinging away on a thread. Take a look over there. Hey, there's a Spider-Man. There goes the Spider-Man. Yes, this is an awesome cover in a comic that was about to be canceled. And actually, this would be the last issue for this original run. You see something that grabs your attention immensely. And I can't imagine how it would have been for someone in the 1960s, 1962, seeing this on the comic rack or the drugstore or what have you. And they know who the Fantastic Four are. They know, let's see, who else was actually introduced at that time? Fantastic Four. Thor was introduced that month. Actually, Yeah, this was pretty early on. The Hulk may have started, right? I have to look that one up again. And you get to Spider-Man. It's like, look at that costume, look at his design, look at the confidence of how he's speaking about what he's doing. Like, okay, I'm gonna pick this one up. And we get a very fun story here. A very short story too, in that, this is just the introduction to origin, a very rushed one, but you know what? It still works. And we get some excellent exposition from our teenagers nearby who are discussing that they need one more person for the dance. And of course, later on, we'll learn the names of some of these people. They're not really introduced here now because, they don't know if Spider Man's going to work out, Lee and Ditko. Um, and at one time, Kirby was involved, but his design was kind of rejected. So it's Lee and Ditko. And we'll get to the history and legacy of that later on, I'm sure. But we have our prototype, Flash Thompson, Liz Allen, Sally Averill looking at Peter, and a bunch of the gang who I'm sure have names, but I can't remember. And they look at him, it's like, hey, we need one more person for the dance. How about Peter Parker over there? And Flash Thompson's like, and yeah, I know I'm using their names before they're introduced, but you know what? It's who they are. Uh, and of course, in typical Stan Lee writing teenager dialogue, are you kidding? That bookworm wouldn't know a cha-cha from a waltz. And if Liz Allen says Peter Parker, he's Midtown High's only professional wallflower. So in our first scene, without our character introducing themselves, we have a lot of, tell, don't show, which all the time you're told not to do. And that's pretty right. But for what is happening here in a condensed version, I let it slide a little bit because I know everything, not everything, a lot of what I need to know about our main character, Peter Parker, here, as we get the great image of him, this timid looking teenager looking at the popular kids, but in the background is the shadow of the mighty Spider-Man, the awesome, amazing Spider-Man that he can end up being. But it's kind of fractured by the fact that, well, no one else really respects him. And that's gotta like be a huge confidence killer for someone like him. And that's a great way of how we are introduced to Peter Parker and learning more about him. An initial part, and sorry, my webpage is kind of dying on me. So that's fun. That's exactly what I like to do in the middle of a recording. Ah, just what we need. Just what we need. Okay, there we go. I think it finally fixed itself. So we move on to the next page, where we see Uncle Ben waking up Peter. Obviously, there's a huge age disparity between them. We got like a 15-year-old kid watched by an older uncle and aunt. We don't know what happens to his parents quite yet. We're introduced to seeing the very lovely couple looking after their nephew. And yeah, because obviously it's not spelled out that he's their nephew, except for the fact that they're called Uncle Ben, Aunt May. And we get, of course, Peter's favorite food of all time, wheat cakes made by his favorite person in the world, Aunt May. And Ben talking about how Peter's growing up, like he can hardly out wrestle him now. And we go over to a short little one panel of Peter talking to one of his teachers and shows his appreciation for science and how he's respected by his teachers. But then you go to the others and you see that he's not respected by his peers. And he actually does call Sally Sally here. And, as opposed to Liz Allen, you're probably more familiar with the blonde. Sally has more of a black hair here. It's kind of that black shaded with blue that would be very common along the way in comics, but it's definitely black hair. And like, it's obvious from here that Peter's attempted this multiple times over and she's not interested. And, there's something to be said about this of the time. It's like, just keep going after that gal. And she eventually will say yes. And like, no, that doesn't work for Peter. And she's way more interested in like a dreamboat like Flash Thompson. Oh, yeah, he doesn't get called Flash Thompson here. Sorry, I'm thinking of something else in this issue. And he kind of says, get lost, bookworm, showing Peter like not being respected by his peers. And how many young kids at this time were at the point where they weren't appreciated by the people around them? And this is one of the reasons why Spider-Man is such character that can last forever, essentially, is that there's a part of Peter inside as a character in a lot of us of feeling left out or not feeling like you fit in or being underestimated by the people around you. And that's why I argue he's truly timeless. Yeah, a lot of this trappings here, if you actually look into it, are very 60s based. But when you actually pay attention, there's a lot here. And it's very wonderful that, Stan and Steve could make a character that is as lasting as he is. So we see Peter, like, he also doesn't give up. Like, he does want to truly be friends with these people who don't respect him, who don't love him back. And what happens here? Well, he tries to invite them to go to an exhibit at the science hall, and they're like, "We don't. You stick to science, son. We'll take the chick," says nameless character background 405, and they leave him behind. And Peter's going to go to the science experiment, which experiments in radioactivity, which of course were big back in the day of the 60s, as in the 50s too, where a lot of your media was radioactivity could do anything because when we were introduced to it, with the atomic bomb, the public was like, what is this wonder thing that causes great devastation, but also has plenty of uses within medicine and other forms of science as well? Like, what are we supposed to do with that? And of course, when you don't know the science that well, you can say, well, just anything. It can make ants grow, to be 50 feet tall or whatever, or it can make a guy get spider powers. Radiation is kind of like lightning in all fictional media. It can do anything. So we go over to Peter watching the experiment. We get the classic, what is the actual science about what's happening here? Who knows? Stan and Steve don't care. It's enough. Hey, just trust us. This is going to make Peter Parker Spider-Man. But, as this is going on, no one notices the singular spider that comes down the web and is caught in between the blast of whatever atomic experiment is going on here. And the spider falls down, bites Peter Parker, and also two other people. Well, he bites one other person and gets eaten by another one. Not on screen, obviously, because that's what Stan and Steve were thinking about back in the day. But because, retconning and unoriginal ideas, people have brought other people into the mix here. So great for us, I suppose. So Peter's wondering why did it, burn and glow? What's going on? He needs to leave. And the other scientists, even the scientists are making fun of him. The nerds are making fun of him. So his poor Peter doesn't fit in anywhere. But like even at the start, something is changing, and we've seen that scene before in like the Raimi Spider-Man films, as well as Garfield Spider-Man, of him like changing after being bitten. This happens pretty much instantly. And he's about to get hit by a car because he's distracted, and he jumps off to the side out of just pure instinct and climbs onto a wall. And he's like, what's going on here? We get that classic cliche scene, which at the time wouldn't have been as cliche, but it is now, of a child seeing him, scaling him, and the mom not turning around when he talks about it. And it's like, no more horror movies for you, young man. And Peter reaches the top of the roof, this scrawny, nerdy kid. He bends a steel pipe as though it were paper. And wow, what a huge transformation for him. Someone who's always been so weak, and suddenly he's gained this super strength. So what does he do with it? He experiments. He is a scientist by nature. So he figures out, oh, well, process of elimination here. I didn't have these things before that experiment. A spider bit me, so surely it had to have something to do with that experiment that was going on there, and it transferred its powers to me when it bit me. That's logical enough, I suppose, especially with 60s logic. So he can't spin webs. He doesn't have the organic webbing, but he can go on a cable and like act like a spider and climb down it like one without any issues. And we didn't see him a few minutes later. What do you naturally do after learning you have superpowers? You go and wrestle. And this is the Stan Lee wrestling. I say this as someone who's not a wrestling fan. I know like next to nothing about how it works. I was so proud the other day when I was on a different show, and I just so happened to know a term that was involved with wrestling. It's like, okay, cool. But we see here $100 to the man who can stay in the ring 3 minutes with Crusher Hogan, who is this hulking, bald wrestler. Any idiot can come up here. So Peter figures out, well, okay, I can do it. So let me go and disguise myself. And oh, of course, my website is malfunctioning again. Isn't that great for the first episode of a series to just have something go wrong? Isn't everyone just so happy about that? I mean, can't you hear how happy I am that this is going on? Okay. Yeah, there we go. There's that. Okay, so Peter shows up. There we go. and puts a bit of a mask over himself, challenges Crusher Hogan, and leaps over him, which is not what you do in wrestling. It's way more showboating for that. That even wrestling is very showboating, but this is very different. He picks Crusher Hogan up like he's nothing, and then like freaks him out. It's like, hey, just put me down. Crusher says he's not even human, and a guy looking in the crowd hears all the people talking about Spidey, and I know he has a name. I forgot to look it up before this because he does appear later on in Spider-Man stories. He's like, hey, we can go make a quick buck. He's a TV producer. He's gonna keep the mask on. We get our reference to the Ed Sullivan Show, which obviously they changed that if this was being written right now. And Spider-Man agrees because, hey, money. And he goes home and is discussing what he's going to do. He's designing himself that Spider-Man costume. Aunt May and Uncle Ben walk in. They've got him some crackers and milk because they're just a loving couple. Surely nothing bad will ever happen to these two at some point in time. And Peter tests out his new device that he's made, a web shooter, which looks really cool because that's one thing I do appreciate too. Like, yeah, I like organic webbing when they decide to do that, but there is something very special about Peter having the smarts to have created something like this based off of him knowing a little bit about what spiders can do, having a science background, but also like, okay, there's something about this inherently made me know how to make this. And he makes his web shooters, calls himself Spider-Man without the hyphen, which is not the only time that has happened so far because they're still getting everything in. And oh yeah, I forgot to say earlier, there was a time where they'll all be sorry one day. And we'll get to that when we get there because he brings it up again. They laughed at him for being a bookworm. Well, only a science major could have created a device like this. Creates the super strong liquid, kind of cement. That'll be retconned a little bit later about what it actually is. But you know what? They're just starting off. His costume's thin enough so he can wear it under his street clothes. And here comes the Spider-Man, not the Spider-Man because no hyphen. So Spider-Man makes several different TV appearances. He's making a little cash along the way. People are trying to get him. He wants other people trying to become his agent. We want you on this show. And as he's leaving, we get the iconic scene of a policeman chasing after a thief, Spider-Man standing right in front of him, and the policeman asking him to help him, and the thief laughing as he gets away because even that goon in the costume didn't stop me. And the older policeman, who will eventually also get a name later on too, in a backstory, way later on, asks Spider-Man, all you had to do was trip him or hold him for just a minute and he could have taken him. Yeah, there's an obvious age difference between the two of us because when Stan and Steve Steve really are making policemen, they're not exactly the youngest people in the world, as you see in several of their stories. But Spider-Man's look like, sorry, pal, that's your job. I'm through being pushed around by anyone. From now on, I just look out for number one. That means me. The acquired situational narcissism is very apparent, but it's also super important for the story being told here. If Peter Parker does not do this, he does not become the man that he will be in the rest of what we know him for as Spider-Man. And he leaves him behind, and we go back to Aunt May and Uncle Ben. They're just so happy about him, being their son now. They've adopted him. They got him a microscope that he always wanted because they know Peter's super into science, and he just calls them the greatest family that any fella ever had. They're the only ones who've ever shown him your true kindness. And he's going to say, look, even though he has been selfish, he's still thinking about them, and he wants to make things easier for them. But it gets to the point where he doesn't care about what happens to the rest of the world because we've seen how they've treated Peter Parker. We've seen the evil that they've done to him. So of course, it makes sense to me why he doesn't really care about them. Now, we didn't see him once again. Multiple newspapers talking about what he's done. Still no hyphen in any of those. And then as he's going back home one night, he sees his police car in front of the house. And we see another old policeman telling him, like, sorry, bad news, son. Your uncle has been shot. Murdered. I mean, no sympathy here. We only have so many panels. We got to get through the story quick. Like, Uncle Ben dead? No, it can't be. And Peter asks who shot him. And it says, hey, it was a burglary. He walked in. He was surprised. And now he's at the old Acme warehouse, with Wile E. Coyote and plenty of other people. They're going to go get him. The Aunt May's next door. Peter says, "Oh no, what have I done? Someone's taking my Uncle Ben. I've got to go stop him." And he knows exactly where he is, but he won't be able to hold off Spider-Man. You can mess with the police, but not me. He gets there to the warehouse on the other side of town, sees that he's inside. It's the police have surrounded the place, and he confronts the thief. Excuse me, the murderer. Sorry, spoilers. Takes him down with his fists, and he sees that face. Oh no, it can't be. It's the fugitive who ran past me, the one I didn't stop when I had the chance. And this right here is the turning point for Spider-Man. The moment things truly change about who he is and who he's going to be, because he knows he could have stopped him. He knows he could have done something, but instead he was focused on himself. And look at what it cost him. He didn't give the thief to the police. And a classic thing which you see multiple times, a thief caught in a web, a burglar or criminal in general caught in a web. And Peter talks about how it's all his fault. Like, if only I'd stopped him when I could have, but I didn't. And now Uncle Ben is dead. And we get some very iconic narration here. And a lean, silent figure slowly fades into the gathering darkness, aware at last that in this world, with great power, there must also come great responsibility. And there's more, but there's a line, people. We have our story. And yes, there's more to Amazing Fantasy 15, but that's not why we're here. We're not here for the weird story of the church bell or, some guy talking to a mummy. We're here for Spider-Man. I'm here for Spider-Man. And what a first appearance. Like, comparing and contrasting other heroes, like in this month, we're introduced to Thor. And I've always loved Thor, but he's never been like my top guy. And his origin is, there's enough intrigue there for me to want to continue reading as I do eventually. But it's also kind of some rando doctor guy in Scandinavia. I think they do actually say Norway. And he comes across an alien invasion that has next to nothing to do with him until he stumbles upon it and ends up in a cave that just so happens to be the place where he gets the hammer of Thor, finding that he's always been Thor, learning about his powers. It's a solid enough, but like night and day between these two different appearances here. Spider-Man, Thor, not even close. Fantastic Four, I would say are better than Thor, not as good as Spider-Man. And four people joined together by common cause, go into space, hit by cosmic rays, changed in different ways as a result, and then having to wrestle with that. That's fine. The Hulk is fine too. This mild-mannered scientist, much like Peter, getting hit by a gamma bomb blast, trying to save Rick Jones from being a stupid teenager, and then becoming this hulking monstrosity, like literally. That's fine. Tony Stark, Iron Man, that's pretty good too. Captain America, pretty great. But like when I'm thinking superhero origin stories, this is like the pinnacle of who a superhero, how they should start off. Because watch Peter's journey here. Unloved by his peers, not respected except for by one of his teachers and his aunt and uncle, who of course they're going to be the ones to love him. So yeah, it's nice, but like at the end of the day, don't you want something more? Don't you want to be loved by other people, accepted by other people? And then through no fault of his own, he gets, bitten by this radioactive spider that gives him powers, and he decides, well, oh, I have superpowers now. Well, I don't need to become a superhero. There are other people who can do that. I'm going to go become a showman and make money. And we're going to see a lot of that, how it ties into his desire to look after his family. And it's not even like he's being completely and utterly selfish there. He does have a desire to look out for them and make sure they're taken care of because they've taken care of him. But there is still selfishness in Peter Parker. That desire of, look at me, I'm the best. I don't need to do anything. I don't need to look out for anyone else because I'm me. And that's what bites immensely when the thief rushes by and he doesn't stop him. He has the power. We've seen him take down a wrestler who was twice his size. You think this guy who's not even doesn't even look like he's brandishing a gun or anything, that he couldn't just like grab him just with his weapon? Excuse me, not even with his weapon, with just his hands and stick onto him, and you're going to stay here. He's shown that power off. It's not like he's giving anything away by doing that, but he can't be bothered because it doesn't affect me. It's the thought process, and that selfishness is going to help drive who Peter Parker is for the rest of his life, because he refuses to live that way again. Sometimes written well, sometimes written very poorly, but it's that defining feature of I was selfish, thinking only about me, and look what it cost me. All I had to do was hold him for a couple minutes, and the cop would have arrested him. Like, I didn't need to be the arresting officer, and he couldn't even do that. And now his Uncle Ben has died, and we'll learn later on in a really good story in Spider-Man 200 about why the robber was there, why he took down Uncle Ben, all the trauma that's caused Peter Parker to this day, why it had to happen. And that's great. But for right here and now, let's see what it causes. This is an atypical ending for a story, by the way. And a reason why it's as powerful as it is, normally there'd be that triumphant, oh, now I have to become a hero and make up for the mistakes of my past. But no, we have a weeping teenager who has lost almost everything. One of the people who loves him unconditionally, and he realizes it's my fault that this happened. Because I could have stopped that robber. I could have stopped that thief. And because I didn't, my uncle paid the price. And now I only have one parent left after already losing. Who knows? And right now, obviously I do, because comics, and I've read it, but who knows what happened to his parents either. So he's almost alone in the world. And that ending, once again, is atypical, because you'd expect something better of like, I've realized I've got to be better in this, but the narration is what changes it from becoming like a downer ending. Instead, we get something more bittersweet. With great power, there must also come great responsibility. Now, later things, I believe it started in Spider-Man versus Wolverine 1, would change this to where Uncle Ben, this was always one of his sayings, and that really got solidified in the 90s. But originally, it was just the narration. And you know what? I would say that's a good retcon of it being Uncle Ben, because I think that drives the point in even more to Peter of, yeah, I knew this. I was taught right. I was raised right, and I didn't let it sink in. With great power, there must also come great responsibility. I mean, the thesis statement of Spider-Man and how he's going to live his life from here on out, because he has that great power. He squandered it before. He can't let it happen again. Brilliant. Because that guilt is going to drive him to become the greatest hero the world has ever known. Better than Superman, better than Batman, better than Captain America, better than anyone else. Spider-Man's the greatest hero in the world because why he's doing what he's doing, so that no one else has to end up like him. And yeah, there's some Batman in there too, but like, there's a huge difference between the two. And under good writing, this as part of who he is done really well. Under really terrible writing, this becomes I'm so guilty and laid back, and no one loves me because I give everything up because the Parker luck, blah, blah, blah. It's a misunderstanding of who he is. Yeah, this guilt drives Spider-Man to do what he does. Absolutely. Peter has never forgiven himself, and I don't think he ever will, even though he has every right to. But there's a part of him that's always afraid that he's going to end up back at where he used to be as someone who didn't care, who had the power but chose not to be responsible. And that's a great message for everyone out there, is that we all have power in our lives in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, some of us aren't like politicians or policemen or firefighters or doctors or what have you, but we have some power in our lives to do good in the world. And it's how we use that that helps define who we are. How do I use the time that I have to reach out into someone else's life? How do I use, the knowledge that I have to help comfort someone in the midst of their woes? That's something we can all learn from Peter Parker is how to use that great power responsibly, to love other people well, to look after them well, like Spider-Man does, and like Peter Parker will, once again, when written well. I'm trying to think of something else I want to say, except I can't. Like, I love this story. One, if not the best origin story of all time. I'm sure if I actually rank them, maybe it wouldn't fall up at number one. We'll see. But yeah, that's the start of Spidey Swing-Bys. So thank you all for going through this episode with me. Please feel free to share this on to your friends, family members, also as well. Feel free to rate the show 5 stars. If you're on YouTube, leave a like, comment down below. Help us find more people because Spider-Man's the best character of all time. I want other people to hear what I have to say about him. If you think I'm worthy of that, feel free to do that. If you don't, you know what? Same thing. No, excuse me, opposite. Don't worry about it. And I'm very grateful for everyone who was here the entire time I was recording this on YouTube as well. I'm trying to think of anything else to say. No. Till next time, webheads. See ya.